Hello everybody, welcome to the Boxing Science Podcast. This is episode 68, where I'm going to be answering your questions about a range of different subjects regarding strength and conditioning and sports science in boxing and combat sports. In this week's episode, we've got a range of different subjects, including my response to Chris Eubank Jrs. weight cut and rehydration clauses, exercises to help improve power during the hook, exercises that can help reduce elbow tendonitis, and also how to integrate strength and conditioning into amateur boxing gyms. So the first question is, what are your thoughts around Chris Eubank Jr.'s weight cutting methods, and also what your thoughts are on the rehydration clause and how that could impact him during the fight. So this is regarding Chris Eubank Jr.'s recent fight with Conor Benn, unbelievable 12-round war and match the drama in the build-up. A lot of controversy was actually around the weight making and also the rehydration clauses that was put on Chris Eubank Jr. I've been asked quite a few times in the gym and even like friends and family what my thoughts are. So I can't really say whether I think that 160 is the right weight for Eubank. Obviously he's been at that weight for a while. It's been up to 168 as well. I can't make an opinion from the outside looking in because I don't know all his body composition, what he walks around at, how much weight that he has to dehydrate. So I can't really make that assessment. Obviously, he didn't make 160, but I didn't really see it as him failing or missing the weight. It was 0.05 pounds over that weight limit, which is literally the same weight as a AA battery, minuscule amount. And if he was on a different set of scales or he just walked around for 1 or 2 minutes, he probably would have made the 160 pound limit. The main concerns were raised after the weigh-in, where Chris Eubank Jr. posted these videos of him making weight, is going through an intense dehydration protocol using heat stress to create sweat loss. Now, this is an effective way to lose them pounds or kilos just leading up to the fight, but often is a taboo subject in boxing because legislation's in place that say that you can't use a sauna to make weight. However, in mixed martial arts, they embrace that. Because they embrace it, there's more support for the fighters in terms of how to do it and also how to rehydrate effectively from it. But also there's more kind of talks and discussions around the education part of it. The fight dietitian is fantastic on Instagram. He shares like protocols on how to use the hot baths, what temperature, what duration, and little tips and strategies to make your athletes feel more comfortable, but most importantly, doing it safely and effectively. And I think that there could be an opportunity here with Eubank Jr. posting about it, be more discussions about people saying that most boxers do this in terms of acute weight loss strategies. So there could be like more discussions. I know the British Boxing Board of Control are investigating it. Previously, they've actually pulled out a fighter from using sauna from a world title fight. Casemiro in 2022 posted like a photo, video, I can't remember, of him using the sauna to be able to make weight. He actually got pulled from the fight and stripped of his title. With this one, obviously Eubank got to fight, but then he's been investigated about it. But I think that the video being posted and the more discussions around it creates an opportunity for boxers, coaches, British Boxing Board of Control to create some more education pieces around it. So what are safe, what are more effective methods to be able to make weight? How much should you be targeting in terms of acute weight loss strategies using heat stress and sweat loss? Also, effective refuel and rehydration strategies to make sure that athletes are safe, rebounding and refueling. Now that leads us on to the next part of this discussion, is the rehydration, the refueling clause, where Eubank was only allowed to put on 10 pounds of body weight on overnight. This makes it quite dangerous because Eubank wasn't able to refuel and rehydrate effectively. And because Eubank had to weigh in at I think it was at 8 or 10 a.m, was late to the scales on the rehydration clause, and I think he re-weighed in at 10 a.m. So you're missing that massive window of opportunity there, because as we get closer to the fight, we look to taper off the carbohydrates and the fuel source. Restricted on the amount of weight that he could put on, is missing that vital window there. So in terms of rehydration clauses, I think that they're pretty dangerous. I know that they're put in for a reason sometimes, where not wanting fighters to cut weight excessively to then rebound. But I think that if you're going to try and make the sport safer, look at the education, look at the monitoring of weights going into the weighing, dehydration tests when people are on the scales and just after, to see how an athlete is making weight safely and effectively. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done in that area, but in terms of putting rehydration clause in there, that is going to be dangerous because an athlete isn't going to be able to rehydrate effectively. People look to try and drink as much water as possible to rehydrate, thinking, if they're feeling like they're peeing and the pee is clear, that means that they're rehydrated effectively. We're looking at actually absorbing the water, rehydration, into the muscles and obviously around the brain as well, which is really important. So I think like this could be a full course in itself, but it's definitely, I think, an opportunity here to be like, right, rehydration clauses, what are they there for? Are they there to gain an advantage? Or are they there to make an athlete safer? How are boxers making weight? Are they using acute sweat loss strategies to be able to make the weight? If so, what needs to be put in place to make sure that they're safe? Is it that we provide more education? Is it that we provide more guidelines? Is it that we provide more support in helping them to refuel effectively? And also, do we put in some monitoring tools in there in terms of dehydration to see how dehydrated an athlete is and how safe that level of dehydration is? A lot of work to be done, but I think that even though there's been a lot of controversy, I think that there's a lot of positives that can be taken from this to help enhance sport, to make sure that athletes are making weight safer and more effectively. During the hook punch, I can't generate power from my hand. Give some exercise tips on how to generate power from the hook punch from elbow and triceps. So generally from trying to improve the hook, I think that a lot of emphasis needs to be on rotational strength, stability, and then transferring that into power. We need to look to increase the strength of the obliques first to create that strength and stability to be able to control and then reproduce force into a powerful hooking action. If you think about a short way, throw the hook, you probably wouldn't just throw a hook from here, keeping the head in that neutral position. You'd probably look to dip first or throw it off a straight shot. So the right hand and the left hook. So following that right hand, you need to be able to control force going through the obliques, going through that torso rotation to then reproduce that power. Really important here as well is that lead leg stability, not wanting to see any kind of movement. Going through that lead leg, knee stability is really important as well. So we do a lot of our work in a split stance action, whether that's doing a row and rotate, doing a cable rotation, doing our power work where we're doing it in a split stance rotational throw. Really important to be able to control that lead leg, create that stability to then be able to create a coiling effect going into that rotation. So they're the main fundamentals of improving strength and power leading into the hook. But with this question here, what I'm gauging is that it's actually the power of the arm that you're struggling with during the hook. Some joint specific work that you can do in terms of punch iso holds. So we can do some manual punch iso holds with our fighters, getting them strong in that hooking action and making sure that their joints are aligned into that right position and creating that isometric strength. But what's also important here is that shoulder internal external rotation strength. So boxers, because they're internally rotated, throwing a lot of punches, using lead hand quite a lot, they end up being quite weak in their external rotators of the shoulder and of the arm. Fighters wanting to be in this position, whereas to generate a powerful hook, you need to be in this position. If you look at some of the greats, Canelo and Golovkin, their alignment during the hook, especially Golovkin, his elbow was so high, the joint angle was absolutely perfect, and this is why it could generate so much power leading into that hook. Let's say if your elbow is down here because you're not as strong in terms of external rotation or being able to internally rotate from this position, it's going to be affecting your power during contact of a hook. Even if you had the most amazing whip coming through the core, going through the torso, going through your hip, if you're weak at the arms and not being able to get that joint angle because of tightness in the shoulder, you're going to end up struggling to generate and transfer that power into the hook. So what's really important here? General shoulder health, posterior shoulder strength, doing exercises such as cable reverse flies, single arm cable reverse flies, band pull aparts, and then actually looking at improving that elbow position with the shoulders. So doing some banded face pulls, single arm banded face pulls, and also banded triple threat. Then also doing isometric holds, sideline dumbbell shoulder holds, also doing some wall isometrics as well, getting stronger in this position. You can also look at doing some internal external rotation work, whether that's like from an isometric point of view or going from an eccentric point of view. What exercises do you recommend to help reduce elbow tendinitis? Exercises to do before training. From a general point of view, boxers can end up getting elbow issues through like overreaching and lack of deceleration, especially when they start increasing their sparring loads. The reason why it's during their sparring loads is because like when they're on the bags or on the pads, they're obviously contacting a pad or bag, whereas like in sparring, they're often missing, overreaching. And the reason why they struggle with this deceleration is because obviously we're taught to drive through and accelerate to transfer as much power into the punches, but also we've got a double peak in activation in terms of how we develop force during a punch. Peak in activation through rotation, drop that activation through the delivery, and then on impact, we peak again, so that snap and the end range. And due to this drop in activation, arm muscles and arm strength is actually decreased in boxers. So if you think about like being on a bench press, for example, going through heavy bench press, it often can get off the chest, and when you fail, it's getting through that sticking point there. And this is what we see with a lot of boxers because they have underactive tricep muscles. With the underactive tricep muscles, they're unable to drive through that sticking point. That's why we use a lot of band resistance, whether we're using it on the dumbbell chest press, dumbbell floor press, doing banded press-ups, or doing a rack press. We often use bands to be able to increase the strength going through the triceps. Because of the lack of activation in the arms during that delivery phase, the biceps and the triceps end up being a lot weaker. So then when they go to snap at the end range, and if let's say if they miss, they see this jolting action. So from a general point of view, if you're struggling with elbow tendinitis, you need to do some more arm training, isolated arm training. So this can be bicep curls, hammer curls, cheat curls as well from people that are more advanced, really concentrating on that eccentric action because obviously it's a fast eccentric action during a punch. And then also focusing on tricep strength because we're wanting to try and strengthen the end range of the tricep muscles instead of the elbow snapping back. So we can do cable tricep extensions and range different variations of this. When leading into like tendinitis issues, we're wanting to try and rehab this and try and reduce that pain. BFR training, so doing our bicep curls and tricep extensions with the BFR cuffs. This is obviously done away from boxing, but this question is asked exercises to do before boxing. This is obviously done within the gym, within your strength and conditioning sessions, but leading into a actual boxing session, you can do some general warm-up of the biceps and triceps, just doing some banded curls or banded tricep extensions, working that elbow in different ranges as well. So doing some sort of banded wrist turnovers here, just to try and warm up that forearm and arm muscles and really start preparing that elbow ready for training. But also what's really effective to use is isometrics, and this can be helping that tendon health, tendon strength, but also can be used in longer form isometrics, can be actually used to help reduce that perception of pain. The research shows like between 30 and 40 seconds, but you can do like 2 sets of 20-second repetitions, and you can do it either through a bicep curl action or a tricep push down action, a 4 or 5 out of 10 effort for them, that 20-second block. This should help reduce pain going into your training. This is from a general point of view, but also from a boxing specific point of view. This is why we use punch iso holds, not only to potentiate to be able to punch harder, but also can help reduce that pain and injury risk during boxing. We do our warm-ups. When we do our warm-ups, we do 3-second holds. But let's say if you are actually struggling with the elbow pain, I would do straight shots only and go between 5 and 10-second holds up against the wall. And this is going to help strengthen the tendons and that length-force relationship of the muscles towards the end range of the punch. Really interesting question here. Do you take a different approach in terms of strength and cardio for MMA fighters to boxing? The answer would be yes. From a specific point of view, obviously from a general point of view, we're looking at adaptations. So even with MMA athletes that have been in here, we work with a gym at high level MMA. We've got the likes of Paul Craig that come down to the Boxing Science Performance Centre, and we take them through more or less the same testing protocol that we use with the boxers. Our analysis looks at them general adaptations. But in terms of working towards specifics of the sport, say like boxing is more aerobically based, whereas MMA athletes require more anaerobic capacity because of the grappling, because of the striking. And also the lower body is needed in a lot more different ways. They need to be more flexible, more mobile around that lower body, but also need to be kicking as well. So with kicking, we need increased hamstring activation. So you'll be looking at using more hamstring-based exercises, whereas like in boxing, you're not really needed for that. I think the main challenge of transferring strength and conditioning from boxing into mixed martial arts is that the intense training schedule of MMA athletes. Boxers that I've worked with mostly only do one technical session per day and do that between 4 and 5 days per week. Whereas MMA athletes, they have so many disciplines that they need to master. Their technical training takes up a lot of their time and takes up a lot of their energy as well. So in terms of like your strength and conditioning, you need to be working out what is the minimum effective dose and how to fit that effectively as part of the program. And obviously there's no like kind of one size fits all approach because different athletes and different gyms approach it in a very different way. But the athletes that I've talked to and advised, I've often had to go, right, we're going to do this training method because this has the biggest bang for its buck. We're only going to do this amount of reps, which is a low volume, but really attack it with the intensity. So you're increasing that adaptation and it's not going to take too much out of your training. There's a lot of different things that I would be working on, but the main things are for peripheral and muscle buffering adaptations in mixed martial arts because there's a more need for anaerobic capacity work. Strength training, considering their different fight types, grappling, Muay Thai, kickboxing, everything like that, making it really individualized towards them and how they want to perform as an athlete, and then looking to integrate that into a more intense schedule. How do you preserve muscle mass and strength in heavyweight boxers, but at the same time build cardiovascular fitness? How many sessions a week would you train cardio versus strength weight training? And how does a week's program look like for a heavyweight boxer? Generally, with lighter fighters, we do 2 strength sessions a week, maybe 3 as a push if an athlete is injured or needing a specific strength goal. With heavyweights, we do 3 strength sessions a week. We do 2 normal of our strength and conditioning program protocol across the 6 pillars of strength. And then we have an assistance session or hypertrophy session to help increase that muscle mass and try and maintain muscle mass during intense training phase. In terms of maintaining muscle mass or increasing muscle mass during a training camp, when you've got all these different demands in terms of high intensity conditioning, sparring, boxing training, the main thing is to make sure that you're fueling effectively. While we've got our performance nutritionist, Lee Rickards, working with our athletes, in particular working with our heavyweight athletes to make sure that they are fueling in the right way. Believe it or not, most heavyweights that we've worked with at Boxing Science often find out that they are under fueling. We've got absolute man mountains that are going on to our resting metabolic rate assessment, and they actually find out that they're burning thousands of calories per day. And that versus the actual input is like quite staggering. I think Tom Aspinall actually posted about how he's been ill for the last 4 months. And one of the reasons was because he was under fueling, because he found out that his RMR, his BMR was 3,000 calories per day, when actually he was only having 3,500 calories per day, which is astounding with the amount of work that an MMA athlete has to do and how much he'll be burning. With that in mind, there's a lot of heavyweights that think like, oh yeah, I'm eating 4,000 calories, 3,000 calories a day. That's pretty good. Actually, they need to be eating a lot more and fueling in the right way. A key thing to try and increase that muscle mass and maintain that muscle mass is to make sure that you're on a performance nutrition diet, making sure that you're having the calories at the right time to be able to fuel your performance and also maintain muscle mass. And then in terms of cardio, we're making sure that we are not doing like too heavy red zone work. A lot of boxers, a lot of heavyweight boxers don't actually need that central adaptations because they have a lot of muscle. So they need to be able to condition that muscle for them high force, high speed actions repeated across a boxing fight. So most of our conditioning actually comes for heavyweight boxers is targeting peripheral or muscle buffering adaptations to help our muscle be able to extract and utilize oxygen and also control lactate accumulation. Most of this is done on the air bike with either max out sprints or repeated sprint efforts. So this is how we try and improve our cardiovascular and aerobic capacity and also our anaerobic capacity too with fighters. Doing these shorter intervals actually help retain and maintain muscle mass for heavyweight boxers. In terms of how this looks across a training week, it always depends on sparring. Let's do 3 strength sessions across the week, obviously spaced by 2 days, and then our high intensity conditioning that's spaced out between 2 and 3 days. And we also have our active recovery sessions to burn a bit of calories and also to keep our athletes fresh and moving well. So do you have amateur boxers train in conditioning blocks, or do you do 3 sessions on each system per week? So it's quite difficult for amateur boxers to be able to effectively structure their training, especially for a conditioning point of view, over an amateur boxing season because they're in competition more or less all the time. Focusing on 3 different conditioning types, so the 3 conditioning types that we use at Boxing Science are central adaptations, muscle buffering adaptations, and peripheral adaptations. It would kind of make sense to try and focus on all 3 at all times, so you're constantly topping up them levels. But with that, you're confusing the signaling responses from each session. You need to be giving your body the same type of stress to create a physical adaptation. So instead of focusing on 3 pillars all at once, it'd be more effective to focus on 1 pillar at a time. Okay, so your 2 or 3 sessions of high intensity conditioning per week, you're focusing on central adaptations. Then you're moving on to muscle buffering capacity, working on the right methods at the right time. Now, what I would say is to make sure that you're planning maximum effort sprints effectively. So you're not wanting to be doing like 30-second max out sprints during an intense competition phase. The reason why is because you're needing a lot of fuel to be able to create a really good session, to be able to promote the adaptations needed, unless you're just like doing the 30-second max out sprints with very little in return. This does take a lot out of you. Imagine doing 30-second sprints in the morning and then trying to spar at night, or trying to fight in a couple of days. Plan strategically in the amateur boxing season where you're going to be able to do 3 to 4 weeks of their maximum sprints, doing them at least 4 weeks out from a fight. Okay guys, so that brings us to the end of this episode of the Boxing Science Podcast. Thank you very much for watching or listening. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content and you support the growth of the channel. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully see you on the next episode of the Boxing Science Podcast.